Hello, I'm Malcolm. Welcome to edition 1952 of the Enfield Talking Newspaper. Now, I hope you'll bear with us today because we've been having a few technical problems, so if our quality isn't up to the usual standard, we'll apologise now, but we're doing our best. With me on the reading team for Thursday, May the 8th, 2014, are Elizabeth, Audrey, and Ross, who's a new reader, with Katherine on the controls. And the items we'll be reading are the copyright of our local newspapers, the Enfield Gazette and Advertiser and the Enfield Independent. This week's local stories include all the fun of the fair, mental health patients being placed in B&Bs, secondary school will train top student teachers, and tributes flood in for tennis star Elena Baltacha. But before we go to the papers, we've got one or two reminders and special announcements. Elizabeth, you've got something about Enfield Vision and Technology and Computers, I think.
Yes, hello. Are you visually impaired? And do you struggle with new technology, maybe a mobile phone or computers? Are you struggling to find something you can use as well as something you like? Have you been given a phone or tablet and you don't know how to use it? If your answer is yes to at least two of the above questions, why not get in touch with us at Enfield Vision? We have a tutor who is a technology whiz who loves gadgets, and guess what? She's also visually impaired. So she understands your needs and can recommend which technology might be good for you. If you're not sure, come and find out, or talk to others who have attended her classes. What have you got to lose? If you're interested, call Jim on 020 8351 7259. That's 020 8351 7259.
Audrey, you've got something about the regular Enfield Vision meeting, I think.
I have indeed, Malcolm. Don't forget that Enfield Vision and Enfield Association for the Blind will hold their monthly drop-in on Thursday the 15th of May at the Park Avenue Disability Centre from 10:30 a.m. to 12:30.
Okay, and Ros, what's this about the Edmonton 100 Historical Society?
Yes, that's right. The Edmonton 100 Historical Society will be hosting a talk at 7:45 on Wednesday the 14th of May at Jubilee Hall, 2 Parsonage Lane, Enfield, EN2 OAJ. Rachel MacDonald will present a view of the New River, 400 years of fresh water for London. So for more information, please telephone the Society on 0208 379 2839. That's 0208 379 2839.
Thanks, Ros. Well, I'm sure you know by now that you have a listener's representative, Diane de Jersey, who will be happy to help you with any problems or concerns you have about your talking newspaper, even our technical problems today. So you can call Diane on 020 8805 6578. That's Diane's number on 020 8805 6578. And now here's Elizabeth with the first news item.
Fun and laughter filled the air at Southgate Green during the 36th annual May Fair on Monday. Hundreds of people attended the fundraiser organised by Christchurch Southgate in the Green. It included a climbing wall, a bucking bronco, maypole dancing and a dog display, cream teas, a barbecue and several gift and tombola stalls. Church warden Phillip Dawson said that the warm weather had helped to swell visitor numbers. There was a constant stream of people, he said. We've been there in snow and hail, and sometimes when there's good weather, people go away for the day. It's not just about raising money, it's a day that families can really enjoy. The rodeo bull and the climbing wall were very popular, and the barbecue and homemade cakes completely sold out. The event, which also crowned 10-year-old Eleanor Tobin as the May Queen, has raised about £4,000 for the Royal British Legion Greater London District. Smaller sums will be shared between the church and volunteers, including the 6th Southgate Scout Group and 2473 Highlands and Southgate Air Training Corps Squadron and the Hatters Explorer Scouts. And we all at the Enfield Talking newspaper want to say, well done, Phillip. We're so glad it all went well. You work so hard as chairman of the Enfield Talking newspaper, we don't know how you have time to do all the things you do. You are quite amazing.
The head teacher of a secondary school says that he is very excited at the prospect of being able to offer opportunities to some of the very best student teachers in the country. Bruce Goddard of Highland School in Wallsend Lane, Winchmore Hill, revealed that his school had been singled out by a teacher training organisation as a national teaching school. This means that the school will take a leading role in recruiting and training new teachers. The scheme, introduced in 2011, is part of a focus on school-centred training with aspiring teachers encouraged to learn on the job with the help of trained mentors. The accreditation, which has been offered to just 200 schools across England, comes after the secondary was awarded outstanding status by Ofsted last month. This means we can offer employment to some of the very best student teachers in the country because people will want to train them with an outstanding school. Mr. Goddard told the Advertiser, the long-standing head teacher added that being picked for the scheme meant that the current staff at the school would be offered a plethora of opportunities, such as leadership training and chances to advance their own careers. We have the chance to train the next generation of leaders, he added. 2 primaries in the borough have also been singled out for the highly sought-after accreditation. Eversley Primary School in Chaseville Park Road, Winchmore Hill and Oakthorpe Primary School in Towlkin Lane and Palmer's Green have been chosen to become part of a National Teaching School Alliance.
Hundreds of patients are being discharged into bed and breakfast accommodation to free up mental health services each year as a result of a toxic combination of spending cuts and increasing demand. An investigation by the Health Service Journal last week revealed that Barnet, Enfield and Haringey Mental Health Trust spent £264,000 on discharging patients into B&Bs in the 10 months to January this year. That is a huge jump from the £46,000 spent over 2012-13, with patients staying in B&Bs for 36 days on average. The Trust was also found to have spent 11 times more on placing patients with private providers compared to 2 years ago. This budget increased from £89,000 in 2012 to just under £1 million during the first 10 months of 2013 and 14, with an average between £440 and £530 a night spent on securing a single bed, usually with the private health firms, the Priory Group or Signet. The massive increase in the use of external beds is a result of the Trust having to cut the number of inpatient services by a third over the past 5 years, while demand has actually increased. Aliv Kazig-Mowgli, ward councillor for Enfield Highway and former chairwoman of Enfield Council's Health and Wellbeing Security Panel, said, "I am disappointed to see the Trust being forced to spend over £1 million with private providers who are making a profit from the NHS. This money should go into frontline patient care. It doesn't make economic sense, and I would urge the government to look immediately at funding and deliver the promise they made that someone with mental health problems could get the same level of care and support as someone with a physical illness." The Trust said B&Bs were only used for patients who had been clinically assessed as ready for discharge, but who did not have a place to stay. A spokesman added, "We have some significant pressure on our services over recent months, and we also try and locate a bed with another NHS provider in the first instance. If not, we look to find a bed in the independent sector." It was always the intention that use of bed and breakfasts would be a temporary measure to support people in this position, and we were working to ensure that this is not needed in the future. In January, the Trust was issued with a warning notice by the Care Quality Commission after an inspection team found seclusion rooms were being used as bedrooms. But the Mental Health Trust this week said that this was no longer being done.
Tributes have flooded in for Elena Baltaccia after the tennis star died of liver cancer at the age of just 30. The former British number one was based in Enfield for much of her career and spent several years honing her skills at Hazelwood Lawn Tennis and Squash Club in Green Lanes, Winchmore Hill. Despite being diagnosed with a chronic liver problem when she was 19 and suffering from a succession of health and fitness issues, Baltacha still managed to build a successful career on the court, reaching a peak of 49 in the world rankings and winning 11 singles titles before announcing her retirement late last year. She learnt in January that she was suffering from cancer and lost her fight against the disease over the weekend.
Patients' groups have demanded more detail on the planned takeover of the trust that runs Chase Farm Hospital. A meeting of the governing body of the Enfield Clinical Commissioning Group at the Royal Chase Hotel last Wednesday was originally billed as the date that a transaction agreement was due to be signed. That would have given the Royal Free in Hampstead the nod to acquire the Barnet and Chase Farm Hospitals National Health Trust. Instead, the governing body delegated powers to a meeting of the Finance, Recovery and Quality Innovation Productivity and Prevention Committee later this month. Monty Meth, life chairman of the Enfield Over 50s Forum, voiced his frustrations that very little detail about the future of local health services had been given to any public body. He told the meeting, "We want to see a viable Chase Farm. We want to know how the deficit is going to be resolved. We want to see a profitable Chase Farm." Mr. Meth asked why specific details of the takeover were not being made public, such as whether surplus land at Chase Farm would be sold off and whether the hospital was likely to be classed as unprofitable and then closed. Liz Wise, Chief Officer of the CCG, explained that the facts and figures Mr. Meth demanded could not be given out by the Trust, as the information is commercially confidential to the NHS Trust Development Authority. She added, "That is the clear advice that we have. We can't put any of that information into the public domain until the Secretary of State for Health has taken his decision at the end of July." Excuse me. However, demands for details on the takeover and the precise nature of the effects it'll have on patients continue to flood in from the floor of the meeting. Vivian Gilardi, health lead of the Over 50s Forum and elected representative of voluntary bodies on Enfield Council's Health and Wellbeing Board, said, "I'm very concerned about the message that I'm supposed to be sending back to the people who've elected me. This very scanty document tells me nothing that enables me to reassure people that this will be a good thing for them." Speaking afterwards, Mr. Meth expressed frustration that not enough information on the takeover was being made publicly available. He told the Advertiser, "We do want the takeover to go ahead on the right terms. We just need more clarity." The Enfield CCG governing body also agreed to delegate the signing of the transaction agreement to the chairman or chief officer of the CCG.
Our young human rights reporter has scooped the top prize at the Amnesty Youth Awards. Ciara Griffin, 11, of Mary Hills Primary School in Bincott Road, Enfield, was crowned Young Human Rights Reporter of the Year for the upper primary category of the ceremony in central London. Hosted by Radio 9's extra Nick Bright, Ciara beat competition from across the country as more than 7,000 pupils from primary and secondary schools took part. Each entrant was asked to write a 500-word report on a human rights-related issue. Ciara chose to write about the civil war in Syria and its effect on children living there. She said, "I can't believe that I've won it. It was a really important subject that I felt someone needed to speak out for." Kate Allen, director of Amnesty International UK, added, "I thoroughly enjoyed the Amnesty Youth Awards. It's so inspiring to see young people show such a passion and commitment for human rights. The quality of the writing has been simply outstanding."
Councils will now have a say on new betting shops opening in their area. Last week, the government announced it was giving local authorities more powers to control the number of bookmakers setting up shop. Enfield Southgate MP David Burrows, who has been campaigning on this issue, welcomed the new powers, which will mean an end to the bookies taking over vacant banks and estate agents without informing the council. He said, "I have been campaigning for some time for additional powers for local authorities to stop the proliferation of betting shops along our local high streets. This announcement by the government allows far more local control over our high streets, and I hope that Enfield Council will use these new powers to avoid the clustering of shop uses like betting shops." The government also announced changes to fixed odds betting terminals, insisting that betting shops utilise accounts for terminals which accept bets of more than £50, so that gamblers must visit a counter to place their bets, in turn allowing staff to intervene as stipulated in licensing conditions. Mr Burrows added, "I will continue to press the government for more local licensing powers to include a cumulative impact test for new betting shops applications." Finally, the budget's increase in tax on FOBTs has already had an impact, with William Hill announcing far more than 100 closures.
A UKIP candidate who said that a black comedian should emigrate to a black country has quit the party. William Henwood was due to stand in Enfield Town Ward in the council elections on May the 22nd. However, his campaign floundered over the weekend after it emerged that he had responded to a speech made by Lenny Henry calling for more ethnic minorities in high-profile roles by writing on the micro-blogging site Twitter, "He should emigrate to a black country. He does not have to live with whites." Mr Henwood then defended his comments on television, telling the BBC, "I think if black people come to this country and don't like mixing with white people, why are they here? If he, Henry, wants a lot of blacks around, go and live in a black country." After controversy raged over the comments, Mr Henwood withdrew his candidacy and resigned from the party. A UKIP spokesman said the decision to quit was made after it was mutually agreed that it would be the best course. He added, "Mr Henwood's remarks about Lenny Henry caused enormous offence, and UKIP MEP candidate for the West Midlands, Bill Etheridge, spoke for many in the party with his strong condemnation." Fellow UKIP candidate for Enfield Town, Bill Price, speaking before Mr Henwood's resignation, said he should not be considered as a candidate for the local elections and added that he felt he was in the wrong party. On Thursday, Mr Price told the Advertiser, "Of course, this is the right decision because his comments were totally out of order. Personally, I was absolutely appalled by his abhorrent comments. It frightened me to think that if he'd stood and for some reason been elected, what would someone with those views have done in a position of power?"
A woman from Enfield who set up a foundation in memory of her son has been congratulated for her endeavours during a trip to Downing Street. Yvonne Lawson lost her 17-year-old son Godwin in March 2010 when he was stabbed in Amherst Park, London. Following his death, Mrs Lawson set up the Goodwin Lawson Foundation, which aims to tackle knife crime among adolescents and convert them into leaders for good. A promising footballer, Godwin was an academy player at professional side Oxford United, and the foundation also uses football to cut antisocial behaviour. Having hosted football tournaments in Tottenham and a leadership training programme at Godwin's old school St Ignatius in Turkey Street, Enfield, Mrs Lawson has been recognised for her achievements by Prime Minister David Cameron. Mrs Lawson said, "Our lives feel empty without Godwin, but the foundation has kept me going, and when I received a letter from Downing Street, I was overwhelmed." The founder of the foundation was nominated by Enfield North MP Nick Dubois and joined other charity leaders who had also been invited to attend. Mrs Lawson added, "It was humbling to think that all the hard work we've been putting in to try and drive young people away from knife crime hasn't gone unnoticed. It was lovely to meet the Prime Minister, and he was very genuine and passionate about what our charity does.
A bowel cancer survivor has been honoured with a national award for his tireless charity work. Stephen Brown, 47, from Lower Edmonton, was diagnosed with bowel cancer in March 2012. But since making a full recovery, he has dedicated his time to raising awareness of the disease, particularly among men. Mr. Brown was given the Achievement Award from Charity Beating Bowel Cancer for his talks and motivational speeches. He said, "I was numb when I was told I had bowel cancer. I was quite young, and I've always looked after my health. My wife Shelley had been a massive support to me throughout my treatment and recovery. It has been hard for her since I was diagnosed. Following the successful treatment, we've just heard that I've got the all clear, so this award is the icing on the cake. I'm thrilled to support Beating Bowel Cancer and do all I can to help spread awareness of the disease." He added, "My underlining message would be to think of the worst case scenario and go to the GP as soon as possible."
This week's 72-hour tube strike may have been called off at the last minute to the relief of commuters, but a 48-hour stoppage did go ahead last week. And despite the delays and overcrowded public transport, coffee shops, kiosks at railway stations managed to put a smile on commuters' faces. The industrial action by the RMT union led to passengers trying to find an alternative route, with some of those who normally use the underground switching to mainline train services. Karen Mercer, co-founder of My Coffee Stop, based at Enfield Chase Railway Station in Windmill Hill, said the strike gave people a chance to discover different routes and to discover the pleasures of local coffee shops. "When customers come in here the morning, they can be quite grumpy," said Karen, "but by the time they leave, they look happy and have a smile on their face. I think it's because we're quite quirky. When you come into our shop, it's like you're entering someone's living room with the artwork and comments on the wall and the health products on display." Denny King, co-founder of Love a Cup, based at Enfield Town Station in Southbury Road, said the strike had seen some new customers replace others who had decided to work from home during the strike. "We saw a lot of new faces," she said. "It's a bit of a catch-22, as lots of our customers didn't come into work either. We are on a direct route to London, Liverpool Street, and the service is better than people think. And there may have not been many delays for a long time, and you can get a coffee on the way from my husband and his smiling face." Denny plans to open a second branch, Love a Cup 2, at the next station along Bush Hill Park in the next few months.
Heated disputes broke out as an attempt to reverse Enfield Council's plan to launch a landlord licensing scheme failed. The decision to roll out the scheme across the borough was called for in a review by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee by the opposition lead on environment, Terry Neville. The licensing scheme, which was formally agreed by the Cabinet last month, will see landlords fork out £500 per property to secure a 5-year licence from the council. In heated scenes at last Wednesday's meeting in the Civic Centre in Silver Street, Enfield, landlords expressed angry opposition to the scheme, which, they say, will lead to prohibitive costs that they will then be forced to pass on to tenants. The council has maintained that by issuing the formal licences, it will be able to clamp down on rogue landlords who rent out unsafe and unsuitable properties to vulnerable people. Cabinet member for Housing, Ahmet Oykana, also said that by regulating the management of privately rented properties, the local authority will be better equipped to manage antisocial behaviour in the borough. However, landlord Edgar Mito argued that there was no evidence to suggest that enforcing regulation on his colleagues would have any impact. Producing a petition against the scheme with 1,925 signatures, Mr. Mito told the meeting that antisocial behaviour had very little to do with environmental factors. And he said that it had in fact been linked to a clinical condition he referred to as antisocial personality disorder. He said, "We need to ask, is there an important public safety issue with antisocial behaviour in this borough? Crime has actually fallen across all of the UK. Knife crime is still high in Edmonton, but the Metropolitan Police are very effective in dealing with public disorder issues." Mr. Neville told the meeting that this regulatory drive would target good landlords unfairly and that rogue landlords would simply find new ways of evading detection. Also, there are already regulations in place to deal with issues such as overcrowding and correct disposal of rubbish, he added. This scheme is not needed. However, even though opposition was voiced throughout the meeting, when a vote was called on whether the scheme should be referred back to full council for reconsideration, there were 5 votes against and just 2 in favour.
Anyone looking to splash the cash this weekend should look no further if they wish to indulge in a mini spending spree. Campaign group We Love Middleton Road has come up with a novel way of boosting business for a day. The group is urging anyone with £10 burning a hole in their pocket to turn up at the junction of Middleton Road and Marlborough Road in Bounds Green at 11 a.m. on Saturday. There they can meet like-minded shopaholics to create a huge cash mob who will inundate businesses in the street with hard cash. Everyone will have one mission, to try and spend every single penny of their tenner in shops along the road that has historically struggled from being sandwiched on the border of Enfield and Haringey. And one cafe owner, who's been at the heart of the road's burgeoning renaissance, is thrilled at the prospect of droves of shoppers coming to the sometimes overlooked area to discover hidden gems. Matt Riches, owner of The Step in Middleton Road, told the Advertiser, "I genuinely think it's a brilliant idea. Already there's been a huge change in the street. Businesses want to come here to set up shop. We have a deli that's just opened up and a new barber's. There really are a lot of diverse businesses in the road that will benefit from this idea." Although new cafes and businesses seem to be popping up along the once neglected street on a regular basis, Matt insists that he doesn't fear the competition for people's pounds. "It benefits us in the long run," said the cafe owner. "It'll bring more people to the area, and anything that does that is good for us. We're going to bounce off each other. Frankly, we wouldn't survive if we were the only place in the street worth going to."
And so we've come to the end of side 1. Please stop your machine, take out the cassette, turn it over and start side 2.